So this is my fourth time doing this for Senator Sanders, so it's an honor. I feel like an unofficial running mate, so let's do this. Things are gonna get a little weird today, a little weird today, a little weird. Things are gonna get a little weird today, a little weird today, a little weird. I'm going back to the moon. I'm going back to the moon so they don't see what it is I do. Hold me down in the parking lot where your friends hang out saying, shut your mouth. No one wants to hear when the words don't count. You're just a baby, I know. No one's gonna be there on your side. Things are gonna get a little weird today, a little weird today, a little weird. All gets better when I get away, when I get away from here. I come back from the moon, 'cause I'm coming back from the moon. I'll have my heart, and I'll cut it loose. Hold you down in the parking lot where your friends hang out saying, shut your mouth. No one wants to hear when the words don't count. You're just a baby, I know. No one's gonna be there on your side. I'll call it off when the measure breeze, sealing your mouth full of bees, letting you know how. I'll call it off when the world's for your cause, putting it down for the lost. And I'll let you know how. Parking lot with your friends hang out saying, shut your mouth. No one wants to hear when the words don't count. You're just a baby, I know. No one's gonna be there on your side. Things are gonna get a little weird today, a little weird today, a little weird. Things are gonna get a little weird today, a little weird today, a little weird. I'm going back to the moon. Thank you, guys. I don't really write political songs, but I was trying to pick things that kind of fit in this apparatus, if you will, and that's a song about just folks bullying, and I think we've had enough of that for a while, so I'm going to keep moving on here. The song's called Copperhead Town. Hey, little bomb, put your sunglasses on, and don't be afraid of the sun. Test them and say when we're all blown away, the reign of the meek has begun. Take the stage away from all the bitching and the bickering. Leads me to believe that we remember only how to bring the hammer down. Stay away from Copperhead Town. All this space we've allowed us to break will never equate to a home. Once they're gone, the next comes along to claim their own mistakes. Take away the stage from all your bitching and your bickering. It leads me to believe that we remember only how to bring the hammer down. I stay away from Copperhead Town. You know they ring the dead end every time they come around, breaking hearts and breaking crowds, practicing the famous resolve of the day, digging holes without a sound, all while looking lovely. Town. Hey, little bum, put your sunglasses on. Don't be afraid of the sun. Thank you very much. So that's a little tune. It's called Not That Kind, and it's from a record that we put out in September. When I say we, were actually a whole band. You just got stuck with me, sorry. And it was produced by a guy named Pat Sansone, who's in a little band called Wilco, so we were pretty proud of working with that cat. So here we go. Follow your stars around until they drop you in the center of town. Lift you reaching for a spot on the ground. Lift you over the pitiful sounds of your romantic gaze. Talking up the better days. Put you in a Valentine spell, barricaded in a granite hotel where all the pictures have a kerosene smell. Ring the tone of drowsy bells that pull you far away. Head down and half awake. If I'm floating out there, kill me now. Is it the right time to push you over the cold crash of 1 year old? To the bones seem dry. I'm not that kind. Dressed as a parting gift, carved solo with a Kodachrome click. While you worked it on the bathroom brick, every sensory is gonna get recalled in spades. Snap on your counterfeit face. That I'm not that kind. Thanks, guys. Am I getting you warmed up properly? Is that good? 2 people I'm warming up just properly. That's good. When the sun goes down again, will you remember where you were 4 hours earlier? Will you remember how you got here and how you're getting home? All the churches filled with arrows pointing the tips of their hands to the sky. You're flipping them off as you're passing them by. Will you remember how you got here and how you're getting home? What's her name? Did you think that if you followed you'd be taken over? Now you missed that train, so you keep on walking on to a place where you feel strong on this day. To play it hard, I have to play it long. What's her name? Did you think that if you followed you'd be taken over? Now you missed that train, so you keep on walking home to a place where you feel strong one less day. To play it hard, I have to play. And when the sun goes down again, will you remember where you were 1 hour earlier? And will you remember how you got here, how you're getting home? I like playing this one just in this setting, only because I think it's fitting for the times. The song's called Minus Thieves, and the whole premise is about staying positive and removing all the negativity out of your life. And in this case, all the negativity that's kind of happening in our government and how things are run. So this goes to our fine friend who got his ass impeached. When they're gone, do you live like a holiday? Are you rested up inside? Is your heart back open wide? When they're gone, is it the middle of a hurricane, where your head's all crystal clear, a new romantic atmosphere? Are the colors getting brighter? Are you strong from your head to your knees and down to your toes? Thieves, you needed to be minus thieves. You deserve to breathe. Minus thieves, minus thieves. All the tall girls around you in a fit of smoke, standing center in the haze, improvising some escape. Will they pause, fire up another anecdote, one repeated to design, trigger sure to change your mind? Are you riddled by the brilliance as your brain just declines in degrees, decidedly low? You needed to be minus thieves. You needed to be minus thieves. You deserve to breathe. Thank you, guys. Just got a couple more, and then hopefully you're properly warmed up. We can move on from this. Mess with my straight hair, wishing I could pull it out. I need that long curl shock of a god. Now that the snow's clear, scrape the car started up. It's a laugh track sliding will stop. I had to give my friends the next time's there goes the last breath of rock and roll. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. Rock and roll. Can't afford the new days. Money's such a stupid drag. Ditching on the bills to collect my hide. Get with the deadbeat kids. Attention till we make ourselves mad. Spinning on the lipstick shade of the light. Hold on, we're picking up speed. No sense in leaving. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. Rock and roll. Looking for no way out. We're tied to the rails with a smile back beneath the stars. Until how soon is now? We rise and we fail, but everything here is art. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. There goes the last breath of rock and roll. Rock and roll. Thank you, guys. All right. Apparently, I'm going to play 2 more songs. That's what's going to happen. My boss tells me. All right, I'm going to do this little song called Saline. And I wrote this, and I didn't really know what I was doing at first, what it was meaning, but it's about cons, right? People who con you. Again, I think it's apropos for this. Under the message you kept for yourself, your heart's getting tangled and pushed to the shelf of a bedroom wall. Oh, you're never lying down and catching the bit, When When ownership passes from one silly thing to the next polyphonic song you couldn't sing, there's a crescent moon. So hang on and hang on and hang on and don't move. Don't move. You ride a nice white horse on your sinking ship. You never hurt no one with your kung fu grip. You got a great smile. Each fine muscle locked in tight. You wanna show some mercy, but all you say leaves dry. Your sailing's dry. You never look enough to get yourself ahead, relying on yourself, a pointed crest. Get you where you go. And hello, 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 you're hammered out a brightly colored plan, using up those little plastic tabs. The tests are failing. Save your self-control. Cell towers bending to catch every phrase of a well-crafted dialogue shot from the stage. How you got 'em now? So hang up, turn it off. You're gonna run it in the ground. And you're a surefire hero in children's books. You give 'em 2-star service with 5-star looks. You're such a clean boy. One cool mission with deep set eyes. You wanna raise your volume and double up your size. You're double sized. You never look enough to get yourself ahead, relying on yourself, a pointed crest. It takes you where you go. And hello, 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 you're hammered out a brightly colored plan, using up those little plastic tabs. The tests are failing. Save your self-control. White horse on your sinking ship. You never hurt no one with your kung fu grip. You got a great smile. Each fine muscle locked in tight. You wanna show some mercy, but all your saling's dry. Oh, your saling's dry. You never look enough to get yourself ahead, relying on yourself, boy, it crashed. Thanks, guys. All right, I'll do one more tune and give it up for Bernie Sanders for crying out loud. All right? Absolutely. So thanks once again for letting me do this, guys. I appreciate it. Spoiling me. So walking high inside the restaurant. Take your time to take your seat. Everybody's pacing you, 'cause you can never pace yourself. Oh, but you got what they want. You got what they want, but they got you. And I want the world loving me. Oh, I want to see me see, making it so much better now. Oh, relax and read all your scenes. Say what they want, say what they want. 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 Say what they want. Say what they want. Say what they want. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for having us.
Changing every day, every possible way. Though my dreams, it's never quite as it seems, never quite as it seems. I know I've felt like this before.
Check, check, check. Check, 1, 2. Check, check, check. All right, Grinnell, put your hands together for Morgane Garnier.
Hello, hello. Hi, Grinnell. What's up? I feel like I never left. Thank you guys so much for coming out on this very cold day. My name is Morgane Garnier, and it feels like I just graduated, because I did. I just graduated this past spring, and I've been working as a student organizer with the Bernie Sanders campaign for the past 4 months. Thank you. Before we get to the incredible speakers that we have for you today, I just wanted to share with you all a little bit about why I'm here. When I came to Grinnell in 2015, I was a really, really angry teenager. Some of you may know this. My first semester here was at the height of when an endless stream of videos showing police execute unarmed black men were filling our timelines. Seeing the Black Lives Matter protests was the first time in my life that I saw an organic movement of people all across this country rise up to demand change and face injustice in the streets. They inspired me and 2 other incredible women of color here at Grinnell to organize a series of events, a series of protests on 8th Avenue that brought awareness to how Black and brown bodies take space in our community. The reason I've dedicated my entire life to an old white man named Bernard Sanders is because he was just like me. When he went to UChicago, Bernie founded a chapter of the Congress of Racial Equality that led sit-ins and occupations to demand an end to the university's racist housing policies. Rather than letting the injustice overwhelm him, Bernie transformed his anger into action. He took that energy to a protest in Inglewood, where he put his body on the line to protest segregated schooling. His history of student activism is why Bernie believes that young people have the power to make a government and an economy that work for all of us. He knows that none of the issues that we are fighting for can be won with him alone. He knows that when young people stand up and demand the change that they want to see, that we're gonna win. So, let's get very, very real about what is at stake in these next 11 days. As you know, it's gonna take a lot for us to win in Iowa and win on the many issues that are central to our campaign on February 3rd. I don't know about all of you, but I get overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of issues that we have to overcome as a society. I feel powerless in the face of revamping our entire energy system to try our best at avoiding climate catastrophe. I feel discouraged when another one of my friends can't get the mental or physical health care that they need because their insurance doesn't cover it or their deductible is too high. Every month, when $350 disappears from my bank account to pay off my student loans, I feel the weight of the next 10 years of payments I will be making for that Grinnell College political science degree. I know that many of you in this room already are or will be in the same boat as me. And what I'm here to tell you today is that sitting back and thinking about these issues is no longer good enough. We can no longer sit back and hope that things will change. We have to do it. This is the essence of why I support Bernie Sanders. Because guess what, guys? It's really not about him. It's about us. There is no other candidate who is as willing or as capable of fixing the broken systems that for too long have ruled our economy and rigged our government. While Bernie's record and long history of student activism and community organizing does uniquely qualify him for this position, he's not the reason I think that we're gonna win. We're gonna win Medicare for all because in these last 11 days before the caucus, every single one of us in this room is gonna talk to our friends, talk to our family, talk to our classmates, talk to the person who serves you coffee in the morning about why you're caucusing for Bernie Sanders and why they need to come with you on February 3rd by 6:30 p.m. We're gonna do it. We're going to win clean air and clean water for all because here in Iowa, we've knocked over 200,000 doors and made 4 million voter contact attempts. We're gonna win because we are the only campaign investing in student organizing. Did you guys know that only 200,000 people caucused last year in 2016? Not last year, 4 years ago. There are 150,000 students in Iowa right now. If we get out students and young people, Bernie will win, and we'll take that momentum all the way to the White House. Sound good? Awesome. But nobody said it was gonna be easy, and nobody said it was gonna happen overnight. But again, we have a choice. We can either sit back and hope that this country gets better. We can sit back and hope that the racists stop being racist. We can sit back and hope that we're gonna have a planet that will sustain human life. Or we can come together right now with hundreds of thousands of other people all across this country and have the courage to transform this world by electing Bernie Sanders. So that's why today I'm gonna ask all of you in this room to commit to caucusing for Bernie, okay? All right, I know that every single person in this room has a phone. Get it out. You ready? Get your phones out. I'm not seeing some phones. We have phones? All right. Open your messages, go to your texts, whatever app you use, and type in the numbers 67760. 67760. You guys got it? Are we typing it in, Gracie?
They've been texting me all day.
No, this is different. This is different. Type it in. All right, we got it? Okay, 67760, and you're gonna text commit. That's all, C-O-M-M-I-T. You write commit? Awesome. Okay, hit send. Woo, you did it! You caucused for Bernie. No, I'm kidding. You're coming on February 3rd, but now you've committed to caucusing for Bernie, all right? And all the students in the room, can I see, who are the students in here? Raise your hands. Awesome, lots of people, wonderful. All right, so all the students, either if you're caucusing in Drake Library or in Darby Gym, we're gonna be having a pre-caucus pizza party on February 3rd at 5 p.m. in Harris. It's gonna be great. We're gonna get together, meet up in Harris, eat some pizza, get hype, and go caucus for Bernie together. So, same number, you text real quick, 67760, and if you type in Grinnell, all of you should know how to spell that, you can sign up for our pizza party right now. All right? 67760, text Grinnell. All right, wonderful. And as all of you know, the caucus is right around the corner. We have 11 days left. And what we do in these next 11 days is going to determine whether or not we have the momentum to take this all the way to the White House. So, I'm gonna ask every single one of you in this room to sign up for volunteering with us in the next 11 days. We have a very simple strategy on this campaign. We talk to people we know, and we talk to people we don't know. The way that we talk to people we don't know on campus is by going and finding supporters in the D Hall, in the Husk, wherever you go, and talking to our peers through connecting over personal stories about what is at stake for us in this election. It's the most powerful way that we can build our movement, and it's how we're going to win. The way that we talk to people we do know is by hosting relational phone banks every single day on campus. We host these phone banks to have supporters call up their friends and family and ask them to caucus with them on February 3rd. All right, we have a bunch of organizers around the room. Could y'all lift up your clipboards real quick? Amazing. They're all here, ready to shift you all. We're gonna take about 5 minutes, and I'm gonna ask you all right now, can I count on you to sign up for 3 canvassing shifts and 2 phone banking shifts? Yes. Can I count on you guys to help us win? Awesome. All right. We're going to do some shifting, and then we'll come back together. Woohoo!
The revolution rock, it is a brand new rock. A 5-5 rock, this year revolution rock.
Oh my goodness!
Careful how you move, Mac, you kick me in the back, and I'm so filled up that I rap now. I have got the sharpest knife, so I got the biggest slice. I got no time to do battle. Hey, everybody smash up your seats and rock to this brand new beat. This your music mash up the nation. This your music cause a sensation. Tell your mom, everything gonna be alright. Can't you feel it? Don't ignore it. It's gonna be alright. Revolution rock. I am in a state of shock. So bad rock. This seats and rock to this brand new beat. This is music, mash up nation. This is music, cause a sensation. Tell your mama, take it to Baba. Everything will be alright. Can't you feel it? Don't ignore it. Gonna be alright. Revolution rock. To the coolest mobsters in Keytown. With the hardest eyes and the smoothest tone. Is your heart so made of rock that the blood must run round the block? Are you listening, mobsters? Hey, all people grow, gotta die. While cargo food goes rolling by. It's food for thought, mobsters. Young people shoot their days away. I've seen talent thrown away. Are you loan shark? The organ plays, and they're dancing to the brand new beat. This is music, my goodness. This music, cause a sensation. Tell your mama, tell your papa, everything will be alright. Can't you feel it? Don't ignore it. Everything's gonna be alright. I say revolution rock. There's no cheese going off. Rubbing me down. This must be the way out. Here's a cheapie.
I see you, David.
Oola, oola, oola.
All right, folks. Let's bring it back together. Thank you to our shifters. Appreciate you. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for signing up to volunteer in these last 11 days. Truly, the courage to start a conversation is what it's going to take for us to win Medicare for all, to win free public college for all, a Green New Deal, and ending endless wars. It's going to take all of us working together to win this thing. So real quick, I just want to show you all how powerful our movement is when we work together. Every single person that's signed up for one volunteer shift, if you're able, would you please stand? Hell yeah. Woo! All right, how about our folks who signed up for 2 volunteer shifts? Please stand. Yes, Vicky. Amazing. If you're not standing, please reconsider your decisions. No, I'm kidding. I really appreciate you all for signing up, so thank you. We really couldn't do it without you. So, I have the absolute honor of introducing our incredible guest speakers today. First, we'll be hearing from Stacy Walker. Stacy currently serves as the Lynn County Supervisor and as Iowa Campaign Co-Chair for Bernie. Next, we will hear from Phil Agnew, the co-founder of Dream Defenders. Yes, very deserving of a round of applause. Phil has founded an absolutely incredible organization that is working to dismantle the prison system and bring in more people of color into organizing. He's literally amazing. And lastly, we'll be hearing from Michael Moore, a true revolutionary documentary filmmaker and author. All right. Once they've all spoken, we'll have a brief Q&A session so that all of you can ask them your questions directly. So it is my honor now to introduce you all to Stacy Walker.
Grinnell, how you doing? Yeah. All right, I'm gonna take this mic out if you don't mind. How you doing, Grinnell? Oh, it is good to be here. I want to say a thank you to Morgan and to all of the staff and volunteers of the Bernie Sanders movement. It is truly a blessing to be a part of the organization and the operation you are building. So give yourselves a round of applause. Let's thank Morgan. Let's thank Misty Rebick, the state director, all the staff and volunteers that make this happen. I am blessed and honored to be here with you today. I hear this is the most progressive college campus in the state of Iowa, which makes me feel some sort of way. I went to the University of Iowa. I thought we were pretty progressive, but I'm here in Grinnell, and I am feeling the love and energy. And I know that kind of energy, this sort of belief in a progressive vision for America, is what we are all after. This is why we are here. This is what unites us, what brings us together. And as I joined the Sanders campaign, we were about 100 days out. One of the reasons, I'll state my case to you, the reasons why I joined the Sanders campaign. It's because when you look around any Sanders rally, any town hall, any convening where the senator is at, you realize that you're at a Sanders event. You know it, right? Nobody has to tell you. You could walk into a Sanders event without knowing who the candidate was, and you could know. Why? Why is that? When you look around at the folks, why is that? The enthusiasm is there. Give me some more reasons. I like this. I feel like a professor now. I'll start calling on you guys. What else? What else is unique about a Sanders event? You are like the A student in the class. That's what I'm getting at. What is unique about this progressive movement that Bernie Sanders is leading is that he has a message that resonates with people from all walks of life, from all different social stations. He's even got billionaires. Tom Steyer is like really trying to be his best friend. And I love it, but I want to like pull Tom Steyer aside and be like, bro, you know he thinks billionaires shouldn't exist. But I love that Tom Steyer is feeling the burn, right? This is a progressive movement. And when you talk about what it's going to take to be successful in the general election, defeating the most dangerous president in the modern history of America, we're going to have to get people motivated, the enthusiasm. We're going to have to bring together a massive coalition of people to go to the polls and win in those swing states, of which Iowa is one, right? It can't just be all the same kinds of people practicing politics as usual. We've got to unite folks around a common cause, around a message. So that's number one, okay? There will be a test at the end of this. Another thing, I talk to a lot of elected officials around the state, and a little secret, this is just between me and you, there are a lot of elected officials in this state who are low-key Bernie Sanders supporters, okay? Low-key, but they're low-key for a reason. Why is that, you ask? Well, I'd be happy to answer the question for you. They're low-key because they are all a part, and I'm included, we are all a part of this system that for generations, this system has been about self-preservation. And it requires people who get elected, who get invited to the fancy fundraisers, who go to the central committee meetings. It requires them to look out for themselves and others. And I kid you not, this system that works pretty good for the wealthiest 1% in this country views Senator Sanders as a threat. Quite plain and simple. And although these folks will tell you he is right on every single one of the issues, and it's not just the political elite that understands this. Millions of people across this country understand this. When you ask them, how do you feel about a universal healthcare system? The American people overwhelmingly support this. When you ask people how they feel about a universal education system, the vast majority of Americans support this. When you ask Americans if they think this planet is worth saving, the vast majority of thinking, rational people say yes. Right? Right? So we know that he has the program that is going to unite this country, that is going to save this country, that is going to uplift most of the people. But we are living in a reality where political elites understand that this movement that Bernie Sanders is building will essentially transfer power to folks who have never had it before. That is why, get back to my first point, that is why when you go to a Sanders event, it's diverse. These are folks who haven't participated in the political system before. These are young folks. These are folks from marginalized communities. And what they all have in common is that they have not had the kind of power that the 1% and the political elite of this country have had. And Senator Sanders is saying, we're going to give everybody an opportunity to share in this American dream, in this experiment in democracy. Everybody has a right and a seat at the table. All right? So that's number two. Are you guys with me? Yeah. I need to hear from you. Okay, good. Good. And finally, we just celebrated MLK Day, right? And I'm sure we saw lots of politicians on both sides of the aisle quoting his famous I Have a Dream speech, talking about this beautiful leader who in the 60s brought this country together, who was wildly popular, and we all loved Brother King, right? You guys probably saw the Facebook posts and the tweets, right? Because that's how we celebrate heroes in America now, right? But what I think most Americans fail to realize is that Dr. King was a radical leftist. And what Dr. King was talking about in the civil rights movement wasn't really popular with a lot of folks. And by a lot of folks, I also mean some of those Democrats, some of those liberals and progressives. And what they said to Dr. King in private was, we agree with everything you're saying, but we just feel like we ought to be gradual with it, right? Because this change you're talking about, it's going to upset a lot of folks. Gradualism, you need to move slowly. Does this sound familiar to anybody in this room? Peak of the civil rights movement, I think Dr. King had a Gallup favorability rating somewhere in the low 60s. A recent Gallup poll showed that 94% of Americans approved of MLK. And I know what you're thinking. What's up with that other 6%, right? They were racist. So we think about the forces that Dr. King and others in the civil rights movement were up against. We had folks who knew fundamentally he was right. They knew fundamentally it wasn't good to have citizens in America who were treated as second class, that the Jim Crow South wasn't right, that we couldn't have two Americas, but they preached this message of gradualism, which I've taken to call incrementalism, which incrementalism has been like legit endorsed by other candidates in this race. You can watch any of the presidential debates, and you will see a candidate say, well, we're never going to get to universal health care in this country, so I want something that's going to be more pragmatic. And it's an applause line among Democrats. That is where we have gotten in this country, to a place where we don't even believe we can do great things anymore. And what Senator Sanders is saying is, I'm not asking to do anything necessarily great when you consider that we are the last industrialized country on the planet not to offer universal health care to our residents of this country. That's asinine, right? We're asking people to understand that we aren't, what we are asking for isn't radical in and of itself. It is what we deserve as human beings. And the good Bernard Sanders, the beauty of this movement is that it's rooted in truth and justice, which is something the Democratic Party, I think, has been missing for quite some time. So why am I here? I am here because this campaign is a campaign I genuinely believe in. It's a campaign who empowers people who look like me. And I, a lifelong Iowan, it's been a long time since I felt like I can join a campaign and see my people on the campaign. And that's real, and that means something. And that's, again, speaks to that first point of how progressive and how diverse this movement is. And I'll be quick here because I gotta bring up my brother, Brother Phil Agnew, who is really going to preach to you. I'm the warm-up act, right? Phil's really going to bring the heat. So I got to tell you this quick story about how I came to be and how I came to endorse with all of my heart the Sanders movement. I was born and raised in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on the southeast side of that town, and that's the area that was historically redlined, and so most of the minorities in Cedar Rapids live on the southeast and southwest sides of town. I was born to a single teenage mom. She had me when she was 19, and she was a beautiful, brilliant woman. When I was 4 years old, my mother was killed in an unsolved homicide. And I went to live, me and my kid sister, went to live with our grandmother, who was also a single mother, who was a child of the American South. She was born in Opelika, Alabama. She moved to Chicago near the second great migration of African Americans who moved from the American South to northern cities. And she came to Iowa following her sister, who was following her boyfriend, who was the first African American student admitted to Upper Iowa University in Fayette. So that's kind of how we got to Iowa. My grandmother in her 50s decided she wanted to improve her life, and she went to college. She went to Kirkwood Community College to pursue her associate's degree in nursing. And she graduated, and she worked the night shift we have two major hospitals in Cedar Rapids, Mercy Hospital and St. Luke's. And she spent her time at different points in her life between both hospitals. She would put us to bed. She would hire a babysitter to stay with us throughout the night. She would walk to work. On most nights, she would get us ready for school. And most mornings, she would greet us when we woke up to get us ready for school. Now, by most accounts, my grandmother, Shirley Ann Martin, did what she was supposed to do. She paid her taxes. She went to school late in life. She got a good job. She was a good citizen. But even with all of that work, raising 7 kids on her own, going back to school, we couldn't get out of government subsidized housing. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment for most of my life. And then when we finally got out, we went to live with her daughter, who was one of the only homeowners in our family. And her daughter was a public school teacher. Still teaches to this day. It still talks about the idea of retiring, but worrying if she's going to have enough to support herself through this last phase of her life. Public school teachers giving her life to serving others. And this is our reality. So when I had to think about which campaign was I going to wholeheartedly endorse, it was easy for me. Think about Senator Sanders' campaign. He's not taking any contributions from billionaires, super PACs, corporate interests. Does anybody know the profession of the #1 donor to his campaign? You guys are a brilliant crowd. It's educators. This guy's got a message about how we are going to treat the most important folks in our society that educators are responding to and working class people are responding to. When I look at the folks who are powering this campaign, I see people who look like me. I see black and brown folks. I see Muslims. I see Jews and Arabs and all people all across the color spectrum. You don't see that in other places. And that's not a knock on other campaigns. This is an objective observation. And so we got to ask ourselves, what is it about a progressive message rooted in justice and love and fairness and equity and the ability to dream big and talk about the things we deserve as human beings, not talk about limitations? Senator Warren said that to, who is it, John Delaney. I don't know who runs for president to talk about the things we can't do. Well, ironically, you got all the other Democrats still talking about what we cannot achieve. And Senator Sanders is saying, no, they're already doing this in other parts of the world. We just got to believe that we can do it. One of the most inspiring brothers I have ever met is about to take the stage, and he is going to light y'all on fire, I promise you. I've been with him for a couple trips now, but I got to tell this story about how I met Phil Agnew. I was in Washington, D.C. for Howard's homecoming, and I was looking at all the events, and one of the events was a conversation on reparations. So I went. I got to this event, and I'm a politician, so I'm shaking hands before the event starts, and I sit right in the front. And all the folks who are sitting next to me, I start shaking hands, this beautiful group of people, black and brown folks. And every person I met, I asked them, I said, hey, so what do you do? And they said, oh, I work for Senator Sanders. I'm the communications director. And I work for Senator Sanders. I do this and that. And I said, wow, is this a Sanders event, And they said, no, we just wanted to come hear this conversation on reparations. And I was moved by that. And then I hear Brother Phil Agnew, who is one of the best advocates for prison reform and criminal justice reform in this country. And he blew me away. Yes, applaud this brother. He is worth it. And of course, being the advocate as he is, I just had to get my photo with him. So I go up after the event and I said, hey man, I need to get a selfie with you. That's what all the kids are doing right now. And I think 20 seconds later, this brother was trying to pin me down on who I was supporting for president. So you've got some of the leading thinkers in this progressive movement across the country who have said this race is too important for us to sit on the sidelines. We got to stand up and make our voice heard. And I am so excited for you all for being a part of this movement, and even for the folks who may be undecided, for even just coming out on this day to hear from this man and to hear from our other featured speaker that we have coming to the stage. So, with no further ado, please put your hands together to welcome my brother, Phil Agnew. Get it, brother.
So I want you all to put your hands together for the next governor of the state of Iowa, Stacy Walker. We only gonna give them two options, congressperson or governor. It's a sincere honor for me to serve with this brother. And as he said, we have been traveling and we've been putting in some miles across Iowa, and we met in DC, and I anticipate we're gonna probably go to South Carolina and a number of other places around this country, beating the drumbeat for this movement that we have. And if I can be frank, I'm gonna tell a little bit of my story, but there's actually no reason and the pinball machine of life that I wind up standing here before you all, other than sheer luck. And I know that, and fate, and maybe some faith in the universe. And it really is the great honor of my life to be able to be here, not just before you all, but with you all, standing alongside you all, and absolutely with Stacy Walker. So please give him another round of applause, please. We're in an age right now where politicians have chosen the road most traveled consistently over and over again. No matter how many dead ends it is at the end of it, they've chosen the road most traveled. And Stacy Walker is one of the brave ones in this state who is standing here and supporting. So, how y'all feeling tonight? Good. Are you all here are you all excited about Michael Moore? I think he's pretty excited about y'all. He's been tweeting up a storm. He tagged me in one of them. I was pretty excited about that. He tagged me. I tagged him back. I said, hey, I'm going to be there with you. My friends hit me up, said, Michael Moore just tagged you in a photo. I said, I know. I sent it to my mom. So I'm very excited about being here. What I like to do, and because we want to get to a dialogue, the body politic is about dialogue, not monologue. And so I'm going to tell you all a little bit about myself and why I'm here and why it's important that I think we're all here together on this occasion and this time and this year. But also we want to get in some questions and some comments and some concerns, and we want to talk about how we built this movement. But before I do that, I know y'all been sitting in your chair for a little while. So I'm an organizer, and as a part of what we do chant, okay? Chants have an innate ability, the call and response has an innate ability to transfer energy amongst us quite simply, quite easily. The only thing that is required is you to listen to what I'm saying and repeat it and match my energy, okay? So this is a chant that I was a part of. I saw it happen. There's a lot of chants. You know, I believe that we will win. I believe that. Y'all have heard that one? Y'all think that came from the movement, right? It came from the Utah State football team, right? I wasn't there. We took it, but I wasn't there. I was right there when this chant was developed. I saw the guy. He was thinking of it as he went. He was making it up as he went along, and it became a rallying cry for our organization in Florida when we did an occupation of the state capitol for 31 days and 30 nights. Okay, and so I'd ask for y'all to join me with it. It's a call and response, and I'm going to get a little bit crazy. I ask that you all get a little bit crazy with me, and we're going to break up a little bit of the tension between your ass and the, okay? All right? All right. Power. Good. Transformation. And miracles. I want it. I need it. I got to have it. Right now. That was the practice one, okay? All right. Now we're going to do the second one. It's a little bit louder. If you feel the need to rise up, you can. Power. Transformation. And miracles. We want it. We need it. We got to have it. Right now. That was intermediate level. That was 201, 301. So we're about to go to advanced level now. This requires an energy transfer from your heart to your hands, to your feet, to your medulla oblongata, your peripheral cortex, whatever you call it. We need you to get up out your seat and really do it. Okay? All right, y'all ready? This is when I lose my voice. We got to rally tomorrow. All right, I'm going to sound like I'm chain smoking tomorrow. All right. Power! Transformation! And miracles! We want it! We need it! Okay. The Grinnell campus police are on the way. There's been a disturbance. I should have done that at the end. This is what this movement is about. So I'm a native of Chicago, Illinois. I was born and raised in Chicago. We have Chicagoans in here. White Sox or Cubs? All right, White Sox. White Sox. All right. You know, I didn't want too much togetherness going on. We had to divide that up, all right? I was born on the south side of Chicago, a neighborhood called West Englewood. For those of you who have never been there, I look out in the crowd and I imagine many of you have not been there. Some people consider it a murder capital. It's a neighborhood that has been disinvested in. It's a neighborhood that didn't just turn out bad. It's a neighborhood that capital left. It's a neighborhood that is the victim of redlining and white flight. It is a food desert. It is a place that didn't have a library for the greater part of my young childhood, but it is a community that raised me. I'm the son of a preacher and a teacher. I'm the oldest of 4 boys. My father is the smartest man that I've ever met. He was on Jeopardy when I was in 3rd grade. True story. Our lives would have been dramatically different. I might have been working for another candidate, but he lost. He bet it all on the double Jeopardy and got it wrong. My mother is the most brilliant woman that I've ever met. An incredible cook, graduated from culinary school, graduated with her master's in mathematics when I was 14 years old, and she was raising 4 boys. And I tell this joke all the time, but you know, we would run around the campus of Chicago State University while she was in class, and we'd just be running around causing up a terror. And people would come up to us and say, "Where's your mother?" And we would say, "Where your mama at? Why you talking to us like that?" That was the type of kids we were, but we loved our lives, and our parents worked very hard to make something for us. And we learned very quickly what it was like to be poor. When you're poor in this country, you are invisible. If you're seen, you're dirty. I saw how people treated my mother and my father, how they talked to them. They didn't know that they were the hardest working people, that my father was a minister, the assistant pastor of my church. My grandmother was the pastor of my church, the most learned people and scholars that I had ever met. That my mother worked every day to raise us and make sure that we were presentable, taught us cursive, worked at our school, made sure that we said yes ma'am and yes sir, looked at people in their eyes, smiled when we talked to them, that she laid the foundation in small ways and big ways for me to even be able to have the confidence to stand before you all today. They didn't know any of that. They didn't care about that, but we were poor, and we grew up in West Englewood. I eventually lucked up and was able to test into some good schools. I went to the #1 school in Chicago, Whitney Young High School, indisputable fact. And even there, while I was bussed out and going to another school, I felt like an outsider. I felt like I didn't belong. I saw other people, and they were in cars that I had only seen on TV. I saw them getting dropped off in Lexus trucks and Cadillacs and Beamers. And I saw quite viscerally that I lived in a completely different world. I was the first person on my bus, and I was the last person to get off of my bus. Nobody wanted to spend the night over my house. I didn't want them to. I didn't want them to see what we lived and how we lived. And I looked up again, because I'm a good test taker. I didn't do homework. My teachers always said, he has so much potential if he would only apply himself. I know none of you all heard that. You all are here. But that was my rap in school. It's so much potential. And I wound up, I'm skipping over a bunch, right? A lot of trials and tribulations, but I wound up going to college. And once I got to college, I decided that, I wasn't valedictorian. I wasn't the second in my class, the third in my class. I wasn't the top 100. And they stopped ranking where I was. And I wanted to make my parents proud, so I threw myself into everything you could on a college campus. I don't know if you all have friends like this, or maybe you were that person, but every bulletin that came up, every email, every flyer, I just went to the meeting. I wanted to be a part of everything because I considered myself an outsider. at my high school, and I wanted to throw myself in. I wanted to feel like I was something once I went to this college campus, and so I joined the clubs. I was in choir for a little while. I thought about band, but they worked very, very hard, and it was cutting into a lot of my other activities, and so I joined everything I could, and I eventually joined student government. Anyone in student government here? All right, go there at the front. Exactly. I was freshman class president. I ran for freshman class president. It was because of my vice president that we won, but I picked him. So, and I started to move about campus, and I started to kind of remake myself in my own image or in the image of the things that I saw on television. And I started to be able to bring in a little bit of money, and it became a life that I had only dreamed of. I became a big fish in a very small pond quite quickly. How many students go here? 1,600. Okay. It was 18,000 at my school. So I really became quite popular. My sophomore year, I ran for sophomore class president. You see the trajectory here. This time I ran unopposed. I had squashed all competitors, and nobody wanted to be seen on the debate stage with me. And so I switched my VP this time. Me and my good friend from Chicago, Will Miller, ran for sophomore class president. My last name is Agnew, and his last name is Miller. We went to Florida A&M University. Our slogan was, Agnew and Miller, we put the A&M in Florida A&M. I was a political genius at that time, and so we began to develop quite quickly on the campus, and once again, my popularity, my confidence began to swell to almost exorbitant levels. I had had everything almost that I thought I wanted. I was at a college campus. People knew my name. People wanted me at the party. Just 2 years before, I had never been invited to a party, and now I was the person not inviting people to parties. Things had changed dramatically for me. I also joined a fraternity that year. It is the first African-American fraternity founded at a college. I became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. On this campus, that was an accelerant to my already escalating popularity. So by sophomore year, I was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. I had run for student body president. I had won that position, as you may have imagined, and I had reached the pinnacle of my young popularity. I was living what I thought all I wanted. I had grown up quite insecure. I still battle with those things. I had grown up wondering if I was ever gonna be something that my parents could be proud of, and though they didn't know what a fraternity was, they knew that I was in college and hadn't gotten kicked out, gotten addicted to drugs, and they were quite proud of that. The summer after my sophomore year, a mentor of mine, his name is Daryl Parks. He was a member of my fraternity. He had been student body president at my university years before. He gave me a call. And this was a person who I looked up to greatly because he was popular before I was. In my young mind, I thought this was a role model for me. And so when this person called me, it was a call that I answered. If he said, come to my office, I said, I'll be right there right away. If he said, jump, I said, how high? He said, come to my office this evening at 5:00 p.m. I want you to be there at 5. When he says be there at 5, I'm there at 4:45. I failed to mention he threw happy hours at his office, and so I wanted to be prompt and not let him down. And so when I got there were a number of students that I recognized, and there were some students that I didn't recognize. From Florida State University, which is another school that was in the city, and Tallahassee Community College, and they all started to come into the room, and I started to speak to them. I started to greet them. I was, at that point, a very effervescent person. Anxiety hadn't set in really for me, and so I couldn't be stopped, and I was greeting people, and I remember Daryl Parks, my mentor, telling me to sit down. And, I looked at him with all my bravado. I said, listen, you don't got to talk to me like that. But it's your office, I'll sit down. And he came in and we all sat down in his mock courtroom, and I was in all of my regalia. I was ready for a happy hour. He had students that I had not met. He had students that I wanted to meet there, all in this room, and we were all gathered in this room, and he wheeled in a television, and he brought it in, and it had a VCR on it. Now, a VCR is a little machine. It's you put a plastic kind of boxy thing inside of it, and the image appears on the TV. You may have seen it. And so he brought this thing in, and a video started to play on the television. It was grainy. There was no sound on the video. And it continued to go, and as the image began to appear on the television screen, I saw some people running around in what looked like a circle. It looked like a yard. I didn't really know what was happening, and I saw them running around in the circle in the yard. And they were running. He didn't say anything. There was no context to what I was watching. And so I thought to myself, this is a very odd way to begin a happy hour. And people were running, young kids were running, and I saw what looked like a young kid fall on the ground. And the kid fell on the ground, and I remember a police guard coming, and it looked like he was admonishing him. There was no sound. I didn't know what was happening. He was standing over him, and he picked him up. And I remember another guard coming from off of the screen, and he just started to hit him. And he just started to punch him. And then other guards came, and they started to punch this young man as well. And they just started to lay into him. And I didn't know what was going on. I still didn't know what was going on. I was still very confused. My mind was prepared for what I had done and participated in for the great majority of my college life, decadence and fun. I was there for a happy hour. I was there to be entertained, and now I'm watching a video, and it looks like they're beating this young man, and he's not defending himself. And I think to myself, something is going to happen. Somebody's going to save him. And then a woman in all white with white hair comes out, and she has her hands on her hips, and he's already on the ground. She comes off the screen. Then she comes back, hands one of the officers something. He grabs the kid, picks him up. The kid begins to flail, and then he falls limp. And I will never forget this. It was the summer of 2005. I was the most popular little kid on my campus. I had joined a fraternity. I was a party promoter. I was a member of a fraternity. I was known on all 3 campuses in the city of Tallahassee. And I had just watched 14-year-old Martin Lee Anderson be murdered to death by a group of boot camp guards. He had been there for 1 week. He had stolen his grandmother's car. And his grandmother just wanted her car back, and she called the police, and she said, you know, he's done it again. He stole my car again, and he was arrested. And when he went before the judge, the grandmother said, please, 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 don't send him to jail. He's too little. He's too young. He's only 14 years old. Please don't send him to jail. And the judge, thinking he was showing him mercy, sent him to boot camp. And 1 week later, as he exercised on the yard, he was beaten to death by boot camp guards who said he was refusing to be compliant. And the coroner had already decided that he didn't die from the people who were beating him within an inch of his life, or the ammonia tablet that was stuffed up his nose in order to revive him that wound up suffocating him, that he died from sickle cell anemia. That while he was running on the yard, his cells began to spontaneously sickle like it happens to so many black people, and he died of natural causes, and they were going to cover it up. And I remember in that moment, a mentor of mine who I looked up to, who represented something to me, came to me in the middle of my decadence, in the middle of my fun, in the middle of my laughing, in the middle of my joy of college experience. And he said, I don't know why people listen to you. I don't know why you're popular. I don't know really what you do, but you're going to have to do something about this. Because the state of Florida has determined and conspired to kill this young boy and to cover it up. That something very bad has happened in the state of Florida, where Disney is the only place where dreams come true for children, and they are going to cover it up. And if you all don't do something about it right now, nothing is going to happen. Only thing that's going to happen is things are going to get worse. And I will never forget that moment. I've told this story before, as you can imagine, but it still touches me. If you go to YouTube right now, you can see the video almost exactly as I verbally transcribed it to you. I'm not making it up. But what I would like to add is this is 2005. So this is way before you can go to World Star and see a group of kids beating the shit out of each other and just keep on scrolling. Or you can go to Facebook and see a man killed by the police and you could just keep on scrolling. You can see a woman being harassed on the street and you can just keep on scrolling. You can see a baby face down on the beach in a foreign, distant, war-torn land and you can just keep on scrolling. This was way before we were numbed. We had succumbed to the numbness of social media, and when you saw somebody get beaten to death, it really, really messed you up. That is singularly the reason that I have the opportunity to stand before you today. And the reason I am here is because I hope to emulate the feeling of urgency that my mentor had for me. I may not be your mentor, but I'd like to tell you that very bad things are happening in this country. And this country wants to cover it up. So right now I have the privilege of bringing someone to you all. This person needs no introduction. This person, they do a bunch of home videos. I don't know if any of you have seen any of them, but if you scour the internet, you may be able to find a Michael Moore film. If you're on the Reddit thread and you're in the dark web, you may be able to find a film by our next speaker. This is somebody who doesn't just do art for entertainment. This is a person who believes that artists are the gatekeepers to truth, that it is the duty of an artist, a writer, a filmmaker to make the revolution irresistible. This is a person that every time they put their eye to a camera is showing the realness and the truth of American decadence and is showing a way forward, and that way forward is forged by everyday Americans who are working and putting their hands on the plow, the grindstone, and making this country better. This is a person who stood with Senator Sanders when nobody else was doing it, has stood tall over and over and over again, an incredible filmmaker, director, orator. I want you to stand to your feet and put your hands together to the one, the only, Michael Moore!
Thank you, everybody. All right. Yes, Iowa. Wow. Well, thank you, Phil, for that wonderful introduction. By the way, what was the double Jeopardy question that your dad blew?
From our memory.
Yeah, it's that painful. You can't remember. Yeah. I have never been on Jeopardy, but I have been an answer on Jeopardy at least a dozen times. And it made my parents more proud than anything I had done, because every night they would watch Jeopardy at 7 and Wheel of Fortune at 7:30. And then I was an answer many times on Wheel of Fortune. So they would just start watching, hoping that Vanna White would be turning my letters or something. And it was, they would call me and they were so happy. I fortunately had wonderful parents. And thank you for that rousing speech and powerful story and getting us all moving here. I also want to tell you, I don't know if you know this, after the shooting at Parkland High School, because I've dealt with this issue for so long now, since the day of the Columbine shooting back in 1999, and we were working on our television show at the time called The Awful Truth. And that afternoon, I called my crew in and I said, I know we're in the middle of this TV show, but we have to go out to Colorado. We have to actually make a movie. We have to stop what we're doing and make a movie about this right now, because I have this awful feeling that if we don't address this right now, this will become a thing. And so for the next 2 years or so, we made Bowling for Columbine, and it still became a thing. A movie did not change that which was so deeply ingrained in who we are as the American people. No other people in the world do this in terms of shooting each other the way we shoot each other. And they're not better than us. They've got the same 23 chromosomes in each one of their cells that we have. And they have angry people, and they have crazy people, and they have all the conditions. The teenagers watch the same violent video games that we watch here, same violent movies, everything, and yet they don't shoot each other, they don't kill each other. So I went down there. I just felt like I had to go down to Parkland a week or so after the shooting just to see if I could be of any help to the kids there. Not to make a movie, but just to kind of be there. They had this. I don't know if you were down there, but they had this what they called their war room. Somebody given them a back room in a strip mall. And the kids after school every day were meeting, planning their revolution. And I walked in, Phil, and on the wall, they had framed 2 letters. The letter that I had sent them, telling them my heartfelt condolences, but also my willingness to do whatever they needed me to do. And a letter from you is framed on the wall from the Dream Defenders. And they said to me, these are really the only 2 letters we want to frame. and it was so powerful. I read your letter. It was so powerful what you said to them. It meant the world to them. And I don't know if you've been told this or you knew this or whatever, but I want to tell you in front of all these people here that sometimes it is just the smallest things that you do, the simplest things that you do for people. Sometimes it is just writing a letter. Sometimes it's just showing up. The world has changed for the better throughout history so many times not because massive armies, charged across the battlefield, but because 1 or 2 people did something. Whether it was Rosa Parks in 1955, whether it was, look at all there was that guy that had the 12 guys, the fishermen that followed him around a couple of thousand years ago. That was just it was like one dude and 12 dudes who just wanted to go fishing. And look what that did, it's like, so throughout history, huge historical changes have happened because a few people did something. At some point, some woman had to say, enough. Whoever that first woman was that said, enough. And then a movement begins. And it has to begin more than once, because in the 1840s, their ability to accomplish anything other than to say enough. But then it happens again in the early 1900s. We're in the 100th year celebrating women. I don't like saying women being given the right to vote. It's like, oh, thank you. Thank you for letting us vote. It's like, no. That happened because there was 60, 70 years of struggle. And then finally, stop and think about this. Pick an issue that you'd like to be involved in. And now, in their case, the only way they can get the right to vote is having a majority of men vote on it and agree that you can have it. Right there, if you had that thought sitting around in the 1840s, you would have went, and people would have said to you, your friends would have said, you're a little crazy, because no women are going to get to have a say in whether or not women can vote. You're going to have to actually convince a majority of men in 2/3 of the state legislatures. That had to have seemed impossible. And yet they persisted over and over and over again until it happened. It's amazing. I think about, in my town, there's a shopping mall where I grew up in Flint called the Genesee Valley Mall. And I didn't think about this till, obviously years after I was not a teenager anymore and I was an adult. And started thinking about how it's illegal in this country to be in love and to marry the person you're in love with if that person happens to be of your gender. It's a crime. And in 2004, in a most cynical move, George W. Bush and Karl Rove thought the way to get the vote out, because the war wasn't going well after a year or so, they were so afraid of losing. They said, we've got to get ballot initiatives. They got it in 14 swing states to put it in the state constitution that it is illegal It is immoral. It is horrific to think about marrying someone of your gender. And it passed in all 14 states, and it brought out so many people on the right that Bush won in 2004 by, I believe, like the smallest margin, certainly the smallest margin of anybody, because we were in the middle of a war. The United States has a history of always re-electing the wartime president. And all he won by was one state, Ohio, by roughly 100,000 votes. Even with all those ballot initiatives, Ohio passed it, Michigan passed it. And I remember thinking at that time, what was it like? Somebody, two men or two women who were in love with each other, had to one day wanted to do what every heterosexual gets to do, which is to hold their hands with each other, to walk down from the Sears store at one end of the mall down to the JCPenney store at the other end of the mall. You go to any mall, when I was, you saw men and women, boys and girls holding hands. But if you were gay, if you were lesbian, if you were any of the, if you even thought of doing that, the repercussions and the danger you would be putting yourself in, you wouldn't make it to JCPenney's. You would be physically assaulted. But somebody, someday back then, had to have said, F it. We're going to start at Sears, we're going to hold our hands, and when we get to Penny's, we're going to kiss. Just like everybody else gets to do it. Somebody had to be the first. These actions, these movements, these revolutions always begin with one person, three people, a few people. And that's why I seriously, when I look back, we talk about the receipts. The fact that we have photographs, footage, that we actually have the evidence of a young man in his 20s, far from home, far from Brooklyn, in Chicago, in one of the most racist cities in this country at that time, and you could make the case today. But at that time, this is 1963. And because of the segregation in the neighborhoods and the schools, because the schools in the black neighborhoods, the kids were being forced to learn in these trailers. They wouldn't fix the schools. They're leaking, the roofs got holes. So they would get these little trailers that the kids would have to go to class in. The white kids didn't have to do that. And so this student at the University of Chicago, who's blessed to be there because he grew up in the lower working class, no money to go to the University of Chicago, gets there, gets in, and while there decides to risk the fact that he's a student there by going and getting arrested at a demonstration. And the pictures are there. And Bernie, it's just like, you just know this about him because you know him today. The personality of Bernie Sanders that we all love and admire. If you look at the photographs of his arrest, he doesn't do what you're supposed to do at a nonviolent civil disobedience demonstration. You go limp, you drop to the ground, and then the police put the cuffs on you, and then you let them take you away and put you in the paddy wagon. Have you seen the photos? If you haven't, I'll post them on my site because you've got to see this. He's fighting the police. They're trying to arrest him. They've got two cops locked on his arms, and he's like trying to break out and get loose. He won't let the cuffs be. It's like he did not show up for the civil disobedience training on Friday night. He was like, or he just was going to march to the tune of his own drummer. That he understood, even in his early 20s, that revolution occurs when people have the courage to stand out, even if you're the only one fighting the police. And when they finally got him in the paddy wagon, there's another picture where they chain him to two black women. And there's the photo. There he is in chains with people whose people have been in chains for hundreds of years. And he's willing to put himself in that situation. We are so fortunate. A time like this comes around, and I guess I've lived long enough where I can say this. A time like this comes around once, maybe once in a generation. Maybe it's every 2 generations or 3, where you have somebody who just isn't going to swallow it, isn't going to just say, I'll take it, sure. Or I'll turn my head the other way. What do I got in this? I don't have any kids in the Chicago school system. I'm not black. And I'm going to leave Chicago as soon as I graduate from school. What's in it for me? I don't think this guy, and I've known him now since the late 80s, I don't think he has ever stopped to think about maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe there's not anything in it for you. Maybe there's actually harm that's going to come to you because you did this. He's devoid of this. If you watch that FX show, The Weekly, the New York Times decision show, anybody see this last weekend? The New York Times decided to film how they endorse for president. And so for the first time ever, they let cameras in to show how the editorial board at the Times makes their decisions. And what they do is they have each of the candidates come in for an interview. But what it looked like, you can look this, it's on demand if you have FX on your cable system, or I'm sure it's online. There's got to be great YouTubes. There's got to be even funnier memes about this by now. It was like watching an episode of The Apprentice. The irony that the New York Times was using a Trumpian show. So the boardroom looks like the boardroom on The Apprentice. They're sitting around a big board table, the executives and the editors and the writers or whatever, the Times that make up the editorial board. And they're each brought in to do their song and dance, their dog and pony show. And the questions they're asking are not serious questions about the drought in Syria that might have ignited this whole thing, and what does that have to do with the climate crisis, or any of a number of important economic questions that could have been asked. Instead, they asked the candidates, so tell us, who in your life broke your heart the most? I'm not making this up. Right? Did you see it? This is not a comedy hour here. I'm telling you. One by one. How are you ever going to get anything through? Because there's Mitch McConnell there in the Senate. And it was just one sort of emotional based question after another. But the show kicks off with Bernie. He comes in and he sits down and he won't have any of it. Won't have anything to do with it. And he says to them, I think we should just get this straight. Your worldview and my worldview is not the same. We see things differently. You, the paper of record that sent us to Iraq to invade that country based on the false stories that you ran every day on the front pages of your paper. So he says, let's just be clear about this. And then he goes, and I've never heard Bernie swear on TV before. And he just goes, he says, I'm just not interested in bullshit. Wow. I'm like, okay, Bernie, okay, chill, all right. And then somebody says to him, well, don't you think, I'm not quoting this correctly, that your personality, that you're the inference that you're the grumpy old man. How are you ever going to get elected? I mean, because I kept talking to the other candidates about whether they had charisma. Because, you know, that's one of the most important things when you're deciding who's going to be president, the charisma level. And he's like, okay. You could just see he wanted to leave. And he had made the decision that in the interview, he was not going to care one single bit about whether or not they endorsed him. First of all, who of us have ever gone to a job interview or me go to a studio to try to get the money to make the next film would just sit there and like, I don't really give a rat's ass. And he didn't say that, but I'm just saying, but that was his whole attitude. And then finally he said, you know, look, I'm the kind of guy, I'm concerned about the planet. And I'm concerned about the economic injustice. And you're asking me these questions, and it's like, let me just I'm going to tell you right now, you know, if it's your birthday, I wish I could do a great Bernie impersonation. I don't have one, but it was so great. He goes, it's like, you expect me to call you on your birthday? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not calling you on your birthday. If you think I'm going to send you a birthday card so you'll write a better story about me in the New York Times, you're never getting a birthday card from me. It was like, right? It was like, he goes into and then he does a fake sort of, so you want me to just start calling and go, oh, hi, hey, Nick, happy birthday. And he's doing this mocking thing. And it was so funny because if you watch Larry David's version of Bernie on Saturday Night Live, where he channels Bernie, all of a sudden Bernie was channeling Larry David. And it was like, wow, this guy is good. And he's not going to tell them what they want to hear just so he can win the endorsement. And so when they, at the end of getting near the end of the Apprentice show of theirs, they said, okay, everybody write down on a piece of paper who your top 4 are. And then they gathered all the papers together and they started reading them, and they started reading all the names. I don't think, correct me, I think there was one piece of paper that put Bernie in their top 4, and there are 12+ people in this room, and not one of them could even put him in the top 4. And you see now why they want to constantly ignore the fact that he is the most beloved politician in the United States of America. Every poll has shown this. For the last 4 or 5 years, when Americans are asked, as far as politicians go, who do you admire? Who do you love? And he is at the top every single time, even by people who did not vote for him and maybe would never vote for him. But they know one thing about him. He will never sell out. He cannot be bought. He will not send you a birthday card. It was like, and that's why in did you see the poll last week where, man, this must have cost Reuters or whoever some money, but they polled the 100 senators in all 50 states to see who's the most beloved senator in their state. Number 1 out of 100 was Bernie Sanders. It was, nobody likes him. Okay, I'm glad you laughed because, you know, at this juncture, we have to appreciate the humor in a lot of this. You know, you're on pins and needles here in Iowa because of what's going to happen in a couple of weeks. The rest of us outside of Iowa are really on pins and needles. We're on your pins and your needles. And so it's important at this juncture to make sure we don't lose our sense of humor or our sense of humanity. You should see these. I mean, I probably shouldn't, you know, I mean, these are private notes that they send to Phil and me and others who are helping with the campaign. And we get these notes from Bernie every day, every other day, or one of his people, admonishing us to not say one negative word about any of the other candidates. Because A, he actually likes them. He's close friends with a number of them. And while he thinks he will do the better job, the way that he wants to get there is not with the politics of old, of the trash mouth way that we live now in this country. And it's so, I mean, it's amazing. And like, I'm sure you and I were reading these like, oh, brother. You know, we're like, we want to just let loose. But you know, he's right. He's right. The poll that came out that was in Newsweek today by the survey, I can't remember the name of the polling company, but they asked 4,000, that's a large chunk for a polling, 4,000 Americans nationwide, if it was a head-to-head contest between Bernie and Trump, Biden and Trump, Elizabeth and Trump, Buttigieg and Trump, who would you vote for? And number one, the person who had the most percentage of the people who would vote for the Democrat over Trump by, I believe, what was it, nine, is that right, Bill? It was 9 percentage points. It was in double, yeah, it was close to, it was like around 10, but more than anybody else was Bernie Sanders at number 1. And then, I forgot what the order was. It was Biden. Even Klobuchar was in there. There were 5 Democrats running, where the majority of these Americans, according to this poll, said they were voting for the Democrat and not for Trump. So what I'd like to say to people here tonight and to anybody watching across the country streaming, stop having this fit about, oh, I don't know, I got to vote for the one who's going to be most likely to beat him. We got to beat him. We have to beat Trump. That's our number 1 job. We all agree on that. That's the number 1 job. We have other jobs, though. Let's not shirk our other responsibilities. Yes, number 1, Trump removal. Number 1. But number 2, we have to remove these parts of our system that gave us Trump. That is our real job. That's the long-term job. And so what I want to say to you is this: stop having the fights with each other about beating Trump. There's 5 Democrats, and this has been consistent now for the last 5 months, that in a head-to-head, the Democrat wins. So relax about this and start thinking about who you want to vote for in the primaries and the caucuses. That person, that woman, or that man who most resembles your politics, the things that you personally believe in the most and care about the most, and the person that you think will be the fighter for these things that you believe in. And vote from your heart this time. Don't go into the caucus room in 2 weeks or into the voting booth in New Hampshire the week after that and play a game of Stratego. This is not what this is. Trust that the majority of our fellow Americans are sick and tired of this. And it's only going to be on November 3rd about who gets out the most people. We know Trump will get out his people. I will tell you this. I will tell you this as a fellow Midwesterner, as a Michigander. Where were you when Iowa beat Ann Arbor there last week? Yes, it's okay. Sorry. Yes, this is the thing about Iowans. You're so Canadian-like, and you're at least well, no, that's a compliment. I changed planes in Minneapolis today, and they had all these T-shirts in the window that said Minnesota nice, and I said, oh no, I'm going to the real nice place. Right, so you know, you're beloved for being this way. And let's give our neighbors, the Canadians, who will never join us in invading another country, the props that they deserve. So the question becomes then, who is the best person to do this? And who, in terms of beating Trump? Remember, beating Trump is not enough. Hillary beat Trump. Hillary won by 3 million votes. It's not enough to beat Trump. We have to crush Trump. If we are going to stop this, we have to be smart. Please do not wait for the DNC to figure out where Michigan and Wisconsin is, so they might maybe send the candidate there once. Don't depend on that. You have to depend on yourselves for this, to make this happen. It's so critical. And I just want to echo something that Philip said here. As you think about your responsibilities here in the coming couple weeks, and I guess I'm here as a messenger, self-appointed, from the other 49 states. We've never seen a darker time. We've never seen a more, we've never seen the potential for the end of democracy as we know it. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this because I don't want to elaborate in some hyperbolic way. And yet, throughout history, there have been people who have tried to warn societies that this could go very, very bad. You think it's bad now? This could go very, very bad. It already is bad. Who are we? You're going to really determine who we are in a very large way on February 3rd. Are we people that put babies and kids in cages? You know, are we people who say, there's an Article 2 that says I can do whatever I want? This is a dangerous, as Bernie says, a dangerous man in the White House. Bernie's not making a political statement when he says that. Bernie is trying to warn us, if we don't get it already, that this is a hateful, angry, narcissistic man-child who doesn't give F all about any of you. It's really, you know, there are a few things that separate us from the other species and animals on this wonderful planet. And one of them is our ability in the way that we express empathy. And it's not that dogs don't have empathy. You already know if you have a dog, they care deeply about you. No, they do. But there's something about us as humans. And it's something that all of us, even the worst of us, have some tinge of empathy, even if it's just for our own family. And to be confronted with a president who lacks this is so scary and so dangerous. And I want to say what Philip said here. This is no BS about the job that you have to do. You are in an historic moment in Iowa. What you do on February 3rd will be written about until this planet decides to remove this species for trying to kill it. When people say we're killing the planet's dying, no. Trust me, the planet knows exactly what it's doing. Planet's going to be fine. It will take care of anything that is trying to kill it, and it will take care of us. And it won't wait 1,000 years to do it. People my age, we may not see it in our lifetime, but you who are younger in here, and I see some of you in here who are in probably elementary school or middle school. Yes, I'm looking at you. The sadness that I have, and I know I hate to say this in front of these kids, that they're the, they're the ones that are going to have to choke to death and will not see the end of their natural lives. And that's a hard thing to say and a hard thing to say it in front of young people, especially when people my age aren't going to die that way. And this is what is so amazing about two things about Bernie. Number one, that the youngest voters in every single poll want the oldest candidate to be president of the United States. It's amazing, but it's not amazing, because I get it. I get why young people are for Bernie. Because Bernie has clearly stated his plan and has clearly shown that he will fight arresting officers if it means doing good for other people. And so he is committed to this so that these young people don't die this way in 40 or 50 or 60 years. And why is he doing it? Again, Bernie, why do you care about what's going to happen to the planet in 50 years? I mean, I hope this isn't a news flash. You won't be here. You're going to live a long life. I know that. Again, there are pictures of him winning in New York City, the citywide, I think it was a cross-country race, and he's coming through the tape. He's been an athlete his whole life. Do not let him challenge you to a free throw contest. But can I just say this? I mean, he's in the last quarter of his life. But in the most important games, it's the last quarter where shit happens that's going to determine winning or losing. And he is willing, when he should just go to Boca and put his feet in the salt water of the ocean after he gets through the various algae and weeds and other things that are growing in the Florida, in the ocean there. But this is this time of life to enjoy life. And he's willing to give this up. And young people know this. That's why they know it's real, because there's nothing in it for him. He will not reap the benefits of us fixing our climate crisis. So why do it, Bernie? Because that's who you've been your whole life. You've always been doing it for everybody else. Always fighting for everybody else. Not thinking about yourself. Not trying to suck up to the New York Times editorial board so you can get their endorsement. I'm sorry to put this on you here. This is, if you voted before, and I've been here on caucus days. I remember, God, years ago when Bill Maher had a show on ABC, you remember that, the late night? It was first on Comedy Central. And I came here as a roving correspondent on caucus day and had a lot of fun with it. And then when I was making a movie, we decided to come here on caucus day. And I got one of the Republican candidates to jump into a mosh pit. And I got Orrin Hatch to chest bump me. He didn't know what a chest bump was. But this isn't the fun and games of that. This isn't caucus day this year. It's not a thing where you're thinking, you're going to go into the gymnasium and, you'll go over to Klobuchar's group or to Buttigieg's group or Elizabeth's group or Bernie. And then you start to, we could go, maybe we could walk over to the other corner over there to Bernie. Bernie, no, it's like, no, don't do that this time. Don't play this out in your head. Live it from your heart and your soul on February 3rd as if nothing else mattered more than this. Because we have in Bernie Sanders the chance to have somebody who's going to fight for the things that we need. Fight and get them done. He will get this done. He won't get it done because of his skillfulness in the backroom politics. No, he's going to get it done because he's going to have a movement of millions. A movement of millions behind him. Franklin Roosevelt told the people that wanted Social Security, that wanted some form of health care, he told them, look, they already call me a traitor to my class, and I'm proud of it. I can't do this on my own, though. You're going to have to build this movement so that we have Social Security, so that people have unemployment insurance, really basic things. This is why Bernie's going to succeed, because what's the Public Enemy album? It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. And this is sort of the reverse of that. It takes a nation of millions to demand and get health coverage for every single American and never have to worry about losing their home or anything. This is our one chance. I'm going to tell you this right now. This chance won't come around in 4 years or 8 years or 12 years. This is the moment. You in Iowa have in your hands the ability to kick off, to ignite a democratic revolution, to actually finally bring democracy to the USA. We've never really had it, and you know it, and I know it, and we all like to, we love this country and we love our democracy, but we know that it's not a democracy if the majority gender still is only 25% of Congress. It's not a democracy if people are actively prohibited from voting. Still, in the 21st century, it's not a democracy. And to explain democratic socialism to anybody who doesn't understand it, it's not a democracy if it's just democracy with politics, where yes, you get to go vote for somebody, but even then, who you vote for, the system is set up to where the majority don't necessarily get to have the say. It's not a democracy if the economy is not democratic. We need a democratic economy, which means you and I and everybody else has a say in how this economy is run. And that is what Bernie Sanders is about. That breaks it down right there. I was on Hannity a few years ago. I know. There's a certain self-flagellation with me sometimes. But you know what? Just for entertainment, sometimes I'll go on Fox just to mess with them. I went on O'Reilly one time, and he says to me, so how much do you think I should be paying? What percentage of my income should be in income tax? 50%? No, higher. 60? No, higher. 70? Yeah, that sounds about right. You think the American people should be paying 70% of their income in taxes? I said, no, you asked me how much I think you should be paying. You should be paying 70%, not the American people. And it was, so when my movie came out, it was called Capitalism, a Love Story. There's irony in the title there. And so I went on Hannity. And the first question he asked me, he says, so, you're a socialist. And I said, well, if you want to start off that way, why not? You should first say that I'm a Christian. No, you're a socialist. No, I'm a Christian. Well, what do you mean by that, he says. What I mean by that is that I grew up in a religion. You know, I'm a recovering Catholic. I said, but I grew up with certain beliefs that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That the rich man will have a harder time getting into heaven than a camel will have getting through the eye of a needle. That if you have, was it 2 loaves of bread and 5 fish? He was giving a big sermon. Help me out, Bible people. Somebody. Was it 2 fish and 5 loaves, or 5 fish and 2 loaves? 2 fish, 5 loaves of, thank you. I had it right, okay. And so Jesus said, oh, we got like 5,000 people here. We got to feed them, and we only got these loaves and the couple fish. So he said, so we got to divide it up equally. We have to divide it up equally. We have to have an equal distribution of our wealth today so that everybody eats. And of course, the miracle that Phil was asking for occurred. And suddenly there was enough as they took out a piece of each bread and the fish. And there was just more of the fish and more of the bread there until everyone was fed. And so I said to Sean Hannity, I said, so you grew up the same way I did, Irish Catholic. So what part of the lesson didn't you understand about that? That the basic teachings of Jesus are what you would call socialism. And it's not just Jesus, folks. All the great religions, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, all say the same thing. That you have to have an equitable distribution so that everybody has a seat at the table. Everybody gets a slice of the pie. Nobody goes without. All the great religions teach this. And I heard Jesse Jackson one time, he gave one of the church service or whatever he was preaching at. And he said, the Bible makes it very clear that the only way you can get into heaven is with a permission slip from the poor. And I was like, wow, I mean, what does that mean? And then he said, well, one day, those 12 fishermen, were sitting around with Jesus, and they said, hey, we've been following you around. We're your disciples. So is there some way that you could give us the password of how to get into heaven when we die? Just tell us how we get to heaven. Just because we've done all this work for you. Tell it. And he goes, okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the password. Here's how you get in. When any of these people here were hungry, you fed them. When any of them were homeless, you gave them shelter. When they were sick, you sought to heal them. If they were in prison, you went to them in prison. Mass incarceration, homelessness, the unequal distribution of what society has. We've been talking about this, friends, for a long friggin' time. And I want it ended in my lifetime. I want someone being inaugurated 1 year from this week who is going to start. He will not be writing birthday cards. He is going to start that first day getting to work on what needs to get done. And trust me by then, because I'm going to tell you this. We're going to take the Senate back this year. We are going to take the Senate back. They have so blown it. The Republicans have no idea how much they've blown it. I'm glad they really don't realize it. But we're going to get those 3 or 4 Senate seats. And he will have a Senate and a House. And he will appeal to their better angels. Not all of them will come along, but enough of them will. And he will not go with half measures. You don't have half health care. What the hell? 100 years ago this year, they didn't say, well, to get a compromise on women having the vote, we could let half the women vote. How about that? They didn't say that. When slavery was ended, they didn't say, well, we got to ease the South into this, so we'll just free half the slaves. Well, they found a unique way to keep them all slaves for another 100 years. And to this day, and I'm sorry to have to tell you what the headlines are going to be in the history books, if the planet and us are here 100 years from now, they will not write kindly about us. They will write that we were indentured servants to wealth and power and Wall Street and corporate America. We didn't get to... All right, do we have him? I was going a little longer here because we were hoping to get Bernie out of the off the Senate floor because they're still, they're doing what they've got to do. He's doing what he has to do. So we were hoping that we could get him out in the hallway to Skype in to you. But he has a job to do. Yes, and he's not here to write birthday cards to us. And And we have a job to do. I have that job. I believe the Michigan primary is March 10th. You have that job on February 3rd. So you need to do this for us. We're begging you around the country. I hope you've heard that from relatives and friends in other states. Don't treat this like the typical caucus. Go in there as fierce lovers of democracy. Go in there knowing that you're going to have a fighter for the things that we still haven't fixed, whether it's the lack of equality where women don't get paid the same as men, whether it's the mass incarceration issue that still exists. Whatever it is, whatever your issues are, go there. Please go there. And I really implore you to caucus with Bernie, to do that with Bernie right here in the great, nice state of Iowa. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight here in Grinnell, Iowa. Thank you. This is our moment. Thank you.
Let's keep clapping for Michael Moore, everybody. Well, y'all, we've been here for a bit, but we heard some absolutely incredible speakers. Stacy Walker, Phil Agnew, Michael Moore. And before folks head out, I just want to let y'all know there's a bunch of pizzas in the back corner for folks that are hungry. Pizza for all. And for everybody that's still here, since we started with a chant, I want to end with a little one. Are we ready? Yeah. All right. Ohio State. What is it? Utah, sorry. All right, y'all. We ready? You're going to say after me. Ready?